Welcome to the Resilient Path with Fran Evans. Thank you to the ones who are walking this path with me and to the ones joining for the first time. It is good to have you here. Today's message is from Genesis 25, the end of Abraham's journey. Ishmael, Isaac, Esau, and Jacob. Genesis 25 opens with Abraham taking another wife, whose name was Keturah. She bore him Zimran, Joshan, Medan, Midian, Isbak, and Shoa. Joshan was the father of Sheba and Dedan. The descendants of Dedan were the Asherites, Letushites, and Lamanites. The sons of Midian were Ephah, Ephah, Hanok, Abda, and Eldah. All these were the descendants of Keturah. As soon as I read about Abraham taking another wife by the name of Keturah, I wondered, where did Keturah come from? Was Keturah a Canaanite? The question came to mind because I had just finished reading Genesis 24. And Abraham was adamant that his son Isaac should not marry a woman from Canaan. But Abraham had been living in Canaan for years. So where did Keturah come from? About 2 weeks ago, I was looking for something in my closet, and I saw a book I had gotten years ago that I had never even opened, titled Missing Books of the Bible. And in that book, Jubilees 19:11 says, "And Abraham took to himself a third wife, and her name was Keturah, from among the daughters of his household servants. For Hagar had died before Sarah." So from Jubilees, I now have additional information about Keturah. Abraham left everything he owned to Isaac. But while he was living, he gave gifts to the sons of his concubines and sent them away from his son Isaac to the land of the east. From Genesis 11 through Genesis 24, I know of Sarah, his wife, and Hagar, whom Sarah gave to Abraham to be his wife. And now here in Genesis 25, there is Keturah, who Genesis identifies as his wife. 3 wives, Sarah, Hagar, and Keturah. Not sure who were the concubines, but leaving this here for now. Altogether, Abraham lived 175 years. Then Abraham breathed his last and died at a good old age, an old man and full of years, and he was gathered to his people. This takes me back to Genesis 15, when the Lord said to Abraham, "You, however, will go to your ancestors in peace and be buried at a good old age." From the time the Lord called Abraham until his death, Abraham obeyed the Lord. He built altars and called on the name of the Lord. He believed the Lord. He questioned the Lord. He trusted the Lord. Abraham walked with the Lord and worshiped the Lord for 100 years. And from what I have read about Abraham's life, the Lord God Almighty was with Abraham every step of the way until he breathed his last breath. His sons Isaac and Ishmael buried him in the cave of Machpelah near Mamre, in the field of Ephron, son of Zohar, the Hittite. The field Abraham had bought from the Hittites. There Abraham was buried with his wife Sarah. Isaac and Ishmael buried their father stood out to me because in Genesis 21, Ishmael was sent away. So I was not expecting to read that he buried his father with his brother. But I will provide more on that later. Abraham was buried in the cave he humbly insisted on purchasing from the Hittites instead of simply accepting their offer to use the land to bury his dead. Abraham secured ownership of the field and cave from the Hittites. Genesis 23, verse 20 says, "So the field and the cave in it were deeded to Abraham by the Hittites as a burial site." After Abraham's death, God blessed his son Isaac, who then lived near Beer Lahai Roi. In other words, Abraham's life had ended. God's blessing continued through Isaac, the promised son. This is the account of Abraham's son Ishmael, whom Sarah, maidservant Hagar, the Egyptian, bore to Abraham. Now, before I continue with the account of Ishmael, I'm going to recap some of what I read about Ishmael in the previous chapters. Sarah was barren. In Genesis 16, she said, "The Lord has kept me from having children," and proposed that Abraham sleep with Hagar, her Egyptian maidservant, so that perhaps she could build a family through her. Abraham agreed. Hagar conceived and Ishmael was born when Abraham was 86 years old. In Genesis 17, Ishmael and Abraham were circumcised on the same day when God spoke to Abraham about the son Sarah would have. Abraham said, "If only Ishmael might live under your blessing." God told Abraham, "Yes. And as for Ishmael, I have heard you. I will surely bless him. I will make him fruitful and greatly increase his numbers. He will be the father of 12 rulers, and I will make him into a great nation." In Genesis 21, on the day Isaac was weaned, Abraham held a great feast. Sarah saw Ishmael mocking and told Abraham to get rid of Hagar and Ishmael. The matter distressed Abraham greatly because it concerned his son. God told Abraham not to be so distressed about the boy, to listen to Sarah, and reassured him that he would make Ishmael into a nation because he was Abraham's offspring. Early the next morning, Abraham took some food and a skin of water and gave them to Hagar. He set them on her shoulders and sent her off with the boy. Each time I read that part about Genesis 21, the way Sarah told Abraham to get rid of his son, who had been living with him for more than 14 years, and the distress it caused her husband, I always pause because asking her husband to get rid of his son does not sit right in my spirit. It seemed so unfair. A plan initiated by Sarah produced Ishmael, and now that she had Isaac, she told Abraham to get rid of his son Ishmael. And Sarah's reason, Ishmael was mocking. That had me shaking my head and thinking, the details appeared off. What does that mean he was mocking? Then I read additional details in Jubilees 17:4. And Sarah saw Ishmael playing and dancing, and Abraham rejoicing with great joy. And she became jealous of Ishmael, and said to Abraham, "Cast out this bondwoman and her son, for the son of the bondwoman will not be heir with my son Isaac." This additional context about Ishmael playing and dancing, Abraham rejoicing, and Sarah's jealousy sounds more plausible to me. Ishmael did not create the circumstances surrounding his birth, and he did not make the decisions that were being made around him. It was because of Sarah's plan why he was born, and after years of living with his father, Sarah told his father to send him away. But God was with Ishmael. When Hagar was pregnant and was in the desert, the angel of the Lord told her to go back. The angel of the Lord gave the boy the name Ishmael. God heard Abraham when he said, "If only Ishmael might live under your blessing." God heard Ishmael when he cried in the wilderness. God protected Ishmael. God was with the boy as he grew up. Genesis 21, verse 20. Ishmael lived in the desert and became an archer. His mother Hagar got him a wife from Egypt. Now back to Genesis 25 on the account of Ishmael. These are the names of Ishmael's sons listed in the order of their birth. Nebaioth, the firstborn of Ishmael, Kedar, Abiel, Misham, Mishma, Duma, Massa, Hada, Tema, Jetha, Naphish, and Kedema. These were the sons of Ishmael, and these are the names of the 12 tribal rulers according to their settlements and camps. God told Abraham that Ishmael was going to be the father of 12 rulers in Genesis 17. And now here we are in Genesis 25. Ishmael had 12 sons, and they became tribal rulers, just as the Lord said. Altogether, Ishmael lived 137 years. He breathed his last and died, and he was gathered to his people. Genesis 25 does not say where Ishmael was buried or who his people were that he was gathered to. His descendants settled in the area from Havilah to Shur, near the eastern border of Egypt as you go towards Asher, and they lived in hostility towards all their brothers. This takes me back to Genesis 16, verse 12, when the angel of the Lord said to Hagar concerning Ishmael, "He will be a wild donkey of a man. His hand will be against everyone, and everyone's hand against him. And he will live in hostility towards all his brothers." So now in Genesis 25, there is a continuation of living in hostility. From Ishmael towards his brothers to his descendants, living in hostility towards their brothers. A continued cycle of hostility. Now looking at the timeline, Abraham was 86 years old when Ishmael was born. Abraham was 100 years old when Isaac was born, which means Ishmael was about 14 years old when Isaac was born. Ishmael was sent away when he was more than 14 years old because he was sent away after Isaac was weaned. Ishmael was about 89 years old when Abraham died. So since Ishmael was sent away in his teens, he would have been apart from his father, Abraham, and his brother Isaac for more than 70 years. 70 years is a long span of time. That made me wonder, what happened during all those years when Ishmael was away, to now where Ishmael was burying Abraham with his brother Isaac? Genesis 25 does not give any additional details. But Jubilees 23 says, "And the voices were heard in the house of Abraham, and Ishmael his son arose and went to Abraham his father, and wept over Abraham his father, he and all the house of Abraham, and they wept with a great weeping. And his sons, Isaac and Ishmael, buried him in the double cave near Sarah his wife, and they wept for him. And they wept for him 40 days, all the men of his house, and Isaac and Ishmael, and all their sons, and all the sons of Keturah in their places. And the days of weeping for Abraham were ended. And he lived 3 jubilees and 4 weeks of years, 175 years old, and completed the days of his life, being old and full of days. So according to jubilees, Ishmael was not only with his father Abraham and his brother Isaac when Abraham died, Ishmael's sons were there too. Here is a breakdown of Jubilee and week of years. 1 Jubilee represents 49 years, and 1 week of years represents 7 years. So 3 Jubilees equal 147 years, and 4 weeks of years equal 28 years. 147 plus 28 equals 175, which is the same number of years Genesis 25 gives for Abraham when he died. Now, back to Genesis 25. We're moving into Isaac section. This is the account of Abraham's son, Isaac. Abraham became the father of Isaac, and Isaac was 40 years old when he married Rebekah, daughter of Bethuel, the Aramean, from Padam Aram, and sister of Laban, the Aramean. Now that I know Isaac was 40 years old when he married Rebekah, the last verse in Genesis 24, which says, Isaac brought her into the tent of his mother, Sarah, and he married Rebekah. So she became his wife, and he loved her. And Isaac was comforted after his mother's death. When Sarah died, Isaac was 37 years old. He married Rebekah 3 years after his mother's death. So it makes sense why Genesis 24 ends with, and Isaac was comforted after his mother's death. Only 3 years had passed since Sarah died. Isaac prayed to the Lord on behalf of his wife because she was barren. The Lord answered his prayer, and his wife Rebekah became pregnant. Interesting. This is different from his parents, but still somewhat familiar, because Isaac's mother, Sarah, was also barren for years before she had Isaac, the promised son, when she was 90 in her old age. And it took 25 years for that promise to be fulfilled. Genesis does not mention Abraham praying to the Lord on Sarah's behalf because she was barren. Unlike Abraham, Genesis 25 says, Isaac prayed to the Lord on behalf of his wife because she was barren. The Lord answered his prayer, and his wife, Rebekah, became pregnant. The babies jostled each other within her, and she said, "Why is this happening to me?" So she went to inquire of the Lord. Isaac prayed, Rebekah inquired. Then the Lord said to her, "2 nations are in your womb, and 2 peoples from within you will be separated. 1 people will be stronger than the other, and the older will serve the younger. When the time came for her to give birth, there were twin boys in her womb. The first to come out was red, and his whole body was like a hairy garment. So they named him Esau. After this, his brother came out with his hand grasping Esau's heel. So he was named Jacob. Isaac was 60 years old when Rebekah gave birth to them. So Isaac and Rebekah were married for 20 years before Esau and Jacob were born, which means Rebekah was barren for years. The physical description of the baby who came out first was very specific, but no physical description was provided for the second baby, except that he came out grasping the first baby's heel. Esau came out first, red, and his whole body was like a hairy garment. And Jacob came out second, grasping Esau's heel. Now I refuse to try and picture what Esau looked like as a baby. Not an image I want to envision. Red like a hairy garment. The boys grew up, and Esau became a skillful hunter, a man of the open country, while Jacob was a quiet man staying among the tents. Isaac, who had a taste for wild game, loved Esau, but Rebekah loved Jacob. Notice, a reason was given as to why Isaac loved Esau, but no reason was given as to why Rebekah loved Jacob. I am not sure why Genesis makes that distinction about the father loving Esau and the mother loving Jacob. But what I know is that some siblings can relate to this. When parents show more fondness towards one sibling and not so much towards another, this can cause conflict. I could say more, but I'm going to leave that right here for now. Verse 29 through 34. Once when Jacob was cooking some stew, Esau came in from the open country famished. He said to Jacob, "Quick, let me have some of that red stew. I am famished." That is why he was also called Edom. Jacob replied, "First, sell me your birthright." "Look, I'm about to die," Esau said. "What good is the birthright to me?" But Jacob said, "Swear to me first." So he swore an oath to him, selling his birthright to Jacob. Then Jacob gave Esau some bread and some lentil stew. He ate and drank, and then got up and left. So Esau despised his birthright. Every time I read Genesis 25, 29 through 34, I always pause because a lot of thoughts and questions come to my mind about this exchange between Esau and Jacob. It does not sit right in my mind. Esau comes across as careless, and Jacob comes across as deliberate and calculating. Since I've read some from the book of Jubilee, I decided to read more. And Jubilees 24 says, "And Jacob sawed lentil pottage, and Esau came from the field hungry, and he said to Jacob his brother, 'Give me some of this red pottage.' And Jacob said to him, 'Sell to me thy birthright, and I will give thee bread and also some of this lentil pottage.' And Esau said in his heart, 'I shall die. Of what profit to me is this birthright?' And he said to Jacob, 'I give it to thee.' And Jacob said, Swear to me this day. And he swore unto him. And Jacob gave his brother Esau bread and pottage, and he ate till he was satisfied. And Esau despised his birthright. For this reason was Esau's name called Edom, on account of the red pottage which Jacob gave him for his birthright. And Jacob became the elder, and Esau was brought down from his dignity. After reading that section, I decided to read more from the book of Jubilees, and I found additional details about Esau and Jacob. Starting in Jubilees 19:12 through 31. And in the 6th week, in the 2nd year thereof, Rebekah bare to Isaac 2 sons, Jacob and Esau. And Jacob was a smooth and upright man, and Esau was fierce, a man of the field, and hairy. And Jacob dwelt in tents. And the youths grew, and Jacob learned to write, but Esau did not learn, for he was a man of the field and a hunter, and he learned war, and all his deeds were fierce. And Abraham loved Jacob, but Isaac loved Esau. And Abraham saw the deeds of Esau, and he knew that in Jacob should his name and seed be called. And he called Rebekah, and gave commandments regarding Jacob, for he knew that she too loved Jacob much more than Esau. And he said unto her, My daughter, watch over my son Jacob, for he shall be in my stead on the earth, and for a blessing in the midst of the children of men, and for the glory of the whole seed of Shem. For I know that the Lord will choose him to be a people for possession unto himself, above all peoples that are upon the face of the earth. And behold, Isaac my son loves Esau more than Jacob, but I see that thou truly lovest Jacob. And I still further to thy kindness to him, and let thy eyes be upon him in love, for he shall be a blessing unto us on the earth from henceforth unto all generations of the earth. Let thy hands be strong, and let thy heart rejoice in my son Jacob, for I have loved him far beyond all my sons. He shall be blessed forever, and his seed shall fill the whole earth. If a man can number the sand on the earth, his seed also shall be numbered. And all the blessings wherewith the Lord had blessed me and my seed shall belong to Jacob and his seed always. And in his seed shall my name be blessed, and the name of my fathers, Shem, and Noab, and Enoch, and Mahalalach, and Enoch, and Zeth, and Adam. And these shall serve to lay the foundations of the heaven, and to strengthen the earth, and to renew all the luminaries which are in the firmament. And he called Jacob before the eyes of Rebekah his mother, and kissed him, and blessed him, and said, Jacob, my beloved son, whom my soul loveth, may God bless thee from above the firmament, and may he give thee all the blessing wherewith he blessed Adam, and Enoch, and Noah, and Shem, and all the things of which he told me, and all the things which he promised to give me. May he cause to cleave to thee and to thy seed forever, according to the days of heaven above the earth. And the spirits of Mastamas shall not rule over thee, or over thy seed to turn thee from the Lord, who is thy God, from henceforth forever. And may the Lord God be a father to thee, and thou the firstborn son, and to the people always. Go in peace, my son. And they both went forth together from Abraham. And Rebekah loved Jacob with all her heart and with all her soul, very much more than Esau. But Isaac loved Esau much more than Jacob. Now, that was Jubilees. Genesis 25 does not say Abraham loved Jacob. As a matter of fact, nothing is mentioned about Abraham interacting with Rebekah, Jacob, or Esau. But I have these details from the chapters I have read thus far in Genesis. Isaac was 60 years old when Esau and Jacob were born, and Abraham was 100 years old when Isaac was born. That means Abraham was 160 years old when Esau and Jacob were born. Abraham was 175 years old when he died. So Esau and Jacob were about 15 years old when Abraham died. I would want to believe that Abraham was a significant figure in his grandsons' lives. And then I reflected on what I know about Abraham from Genesis 11 until his death in Genesis 25. His name was Abram in Genesis 11. He lived in Ur of the Chaldeans and later in Haran. Abraham's father's name was Terah. His brothers were Nahor and Haran. Haran had a son named Lot. Haran died in Ur of the Chaldeans while his father Terah was still alive. Abram married Sarai. His brother Nahor married Milcah. Terah lived 205 years and died in Haran. The Lord called Abram and told him to leave his country, his people, and his father's household, and go to the land God would show him. Abram was 75 years old when he set out from Haran. He took his wife Sarai, his nephew Lot, all the possessions they had accumulated, and the people they had acquired in Haran, and they set out for the land of Canaan. When they arrived, Abram built an altar there to the Lord. When he feared for his life, he told Sarai to say she was his sister. This happened in Egypt and again in Gerar. He valued peace. When conflict arose between his herdsman and Lot's herdsman, Abram did not fight over the land. He allowed Lot to choose where he wanted to go and said, "Let's not have any quarreling between you and me." He was loyal to his family. When Lot was taken captive, Abram gathered 318 trained men from his household, pursued those who had taken Lot, and rescued him. Abram refused the possession offered by the king of Sodom because he did not want the king to be able to say, "I made Abram rich." Abram told the Lord about his concern over being childless and believing a servant in his household was going to be his heir. He questioned the Lord about the promise because he could not understand how it would be fulfilled. Abram believed the Lord, and he credited it to him as righteousness. Abram agreed to Sarah's plan concerning Hagar, and Ishmael was born. He told Sarah to do whatever she thought was best concerning Hagar. Abram asked God if only Ishmael might live under your blessing. Abram was changed to Abraham by God. Abraham obeyed God. When God established circumcision as the sign of the covenant, Abraham circumcised Ishmael and every male in his household that very day. He showed hospitality. When the visitors appeared near the great tree of Mamre, Abraham hurried to receive them, offered them water and rest, and provided food for them. He interceded for others. When God revealed what was going to happen to Sodom and Gomorrah, Abraham pleaded concerning the righteous who might be living there, going from 50 all the way down to 10. Abraham prayed for Abimelech, and God healed Abimelech and his household. Isaac was born to Abraham in his old age, at the very time God had promised. Abraham was greatly distressed when Sarah told him to send his son Ishmael away. Abraham gave Hagar food and a skin of water and sent Hagar and Ishmael away. Abraham made a treaty with Abimelech. Abraham trusted God concerning Isaac. When God tested him, Abraham obeyed and took Isaac to the place God showed him. On the way, Abraham said, God himself will provide the lamb for the burnt offering, my son. Abraham mourned and wept over Sarah when she died. Abraham insisted upon paying for the field and cave at Machpelah as a burial place. In his old age, Abraham sent his senior servant to his relatives to find a wife for his son Isaac. Genesis 24 says, Abraham was now very old, and the Lord had blessed him in every way. Abraham died at 175 years old, a good old age, an old man and full of years, and he was gathered to his people. His sons Isaac and Ishmael buried him with Sarah in the cave of Machpelah. That's a lot about Abraham. And knowing all those details about Abraham from Genesis 11 until his death here in Genesis 25, and reading about what a significant person he was, his relationship with God, how abundantly God blessed him, and how faithful God was to him, I began wondering, who was Abraham before the Lord called him in Genesis 12 at age 75? Who was Abraham's mother? What was Abraham like before age 75? Once again, I turned to Jubilees, and there are tons of details about Abraham's life. I am about to read some of those details, not all of it, but a fair portion. Starting in Jubilees 11 from verse 13. And in the 39th Jubilee, in the second week in the first year, Terah took to himself a wife, and her name was Edna, the daughter of Abram, the daughter of his father's sister. And in the 7th year of this week, she bare him a son, and he called his name Abram, by the name of the father of his mother, for he had died before his daughter had conceived a son. And the child began to understand the errors of the earth, and all went astray after graven images and after uncleanness. And his father taught him writing, and he was 2 weeks of years old, and he separated himself from his father, that he might not worship idols with them. And he began to pray to the Creator of all things, that he might save him from the errors of the children of men, and that his portion should not fall into error after uncleanness and vileness. And the seed time came for the sowing of the seed upon the land, and they all went forth together to protect their seed against the ravens. And Abram went forth with those that went, and the child was a lad of 14 years. And a cloud of ravens came to devour the seeds, and Abraham ran to meet them before they settled on the ground, and cried to them before they settled on the ground to devour the seeds, and said, Descend not, return to the place whence ye came. And they proceeded to turn back. And he caused the clouds of ravens to turn back that day 70 times. And of all the ravens throughout all the land where Abram was, there settled not so much as one. And all who were with him throughout all the land saw him cry out, and all the ravens turned back. And his name became great in all the land of the Chaldees. And there came to him this year all those that wished to sow, and he went with them until the time of sowing ceased. And they sowed their land, and that year they brought enough grain home, and ate, and were satisfied. And in the 5th year of the 5th week, Abram taught those who made implements for oxen, the artificers in wood, and they made a vessel above the ground facing the frame of the plow in order to put the seed thereon. And the seeds fell down therefrom upon the share of the plow, and was hidden in the earth, and they no longer feared the ravens. And after this manner they made vessels above the ground on all the frames of the plows, and they sow until all the land, according as Abram commanded them, and they no longer feared the birds. Move it into Jubilees 12. And it came to pass in the 6th week, and in the 7th year thereof, that Abram said to Terah his father, saying, Father. And he said, Behold, here I am, my son. And he said, What help and profit have we from those idols which thou dost worship, and before which thou dost bow thyself? For there is no spirit in them, for they are dumb forms, and a misleading of the heart. Worship them not. Worship the God of heaven, who causes the rain and the dew to descend on the earth, and does everything upon the earth, and has created everything by his word, and all life is from before his face. Why do ye worship things that have no spirit in them? For they are the work of men's hands, and on your shoulders do ye bear them, and ye have no help from them. But they are a great cause of shame to those who make them, and a misleading of the heart to those who worship them. Worship them not. And his father said unto him, I also know it, my son. But what shall I do with the people who have made me to serve before them? And if I tell them the truth, they will slay me. For their soul cleaves to them to worship them and honor them. Keep silent, my son, lest they slay thee. And these words he spake to his 2 brothers, and they were angry with him, and he kept silent. And in the 40th Jubilee, in the 2nd week, in the 7th year thereof, Abram took to himself a wife, and her name was Sarai, the daughter of his father, and she became his wife. And Haran, his brother, took to himself a wife in the 3rd year of the 3rd week, and she bare him a son in the 7th year of this week, and he called his name Lot. And Nahor, his brother, took to himself a wife. And in the 16th year of the life of Abram, that is, in the 4th week, in the 4th year thereof, Abram arose by night and burned the house burned the house of the idols. And he burned all that was in the house, and no man knew it. And they arose in the night and sought to save their gods from the midst of the fire. And Haran hasted to save them, but the fire flamed over him, and he was burnt in the fire. And he died in Ur of the Chaldees before Terah his father. And they buried him in Ur of the Chaldees. And Terah went forth from Ur of the Chaldees, he and his sons, to go into the land of Lebanon and into the land of Canaan. And he dwelled in the land of Haran. And Abram dwelled with Terah his father in Haran 2 weeks of years. And in the 6th week, in the 5th year thereof, Abram sat up throughout the night on the new moon of the 7th month to observe the stars from the evening to the morning, in order to see what would be the character of the year with regard to the rains. And he was alone as he sat and observed. And a word came into his heart, and he said, all the signs of the stars and the signs of the moon and of the sun are all in the hand of the Lord. Why do I search them out? If he desires, he causes it to rain morning and evening. And if he desires, he withholds it. And all things are in his hand. And he prayed that night and said, my God, God Most High, thou alone art my God, and thee and thy dominion have I chosen. And thou hast created all things, and all things are the works of thy hands. Deliver me from the hands of evil spirits, who have dominion over the thoughts of men's hearts. And let them not lead me astray from thee, my God. And establish thus me and my seed forever, that we may go not astray from henceforth and forevermore. And he said, shall I return unto Ur of the Chaldees, who seek my face, that I may return to them? Am I to remain here in this place? The right path before thee prosper it in the hands of thy servant, that he may fulfill it, and that I may not walk in the deceitfulness of my heart, O my God. And he made an ending of speaking and praying. And behold, the word of the Lord was sent to him through me, saying, get thee up from thy country, and from thy kindred, and from the house of thy father unto a land which I will show thee. And I shall make thee a great and numerous nation, and I will bless thee, and I will make thy name great, and thou shalt be blessed in the earth, and in thee shall all families of the earth be blessed. And I will bless them that bless thee, and curse them that curse thee. And I will be a God to thee and thy son, and to thy son's son, and to all thy seed. Fear not, from henceforth and unto all generations of the earth. I am thy God. And the Lord God said, open his mouth and his ears, that he may hear and speak with his mouth, with the language which has been revealed. For it has ceased from the mouths of all children of men, from the day of the overthrow of Babel. And I opened his mouth, and his ears and his lips, and I began to speak with him in Hebrew, in the tongue of the creation. And he took the books of his fathers, and these were written in Hebrew, and he transcribed them, and he began from henceforth to study them. And I made known to him that which he could not understand, and he studied them during the 6 rainy months. And it came to pass in the 7th year of the 6th week that he spoke to his father and informed him that he would leave Haran to go into the land of Canaan to see it and return to him. And Terah, his father, said to him, Go in peace. May the eternal God make thy path straight, and the Lord be with thee, and protect thee from all evil, and grant unto thee grace, mercy, and favor before those who see thee. And may none of the children of men have power over thee to harm thee. Go in peace. And if thou seest a land pleasant to thy eyes to dwell in, then arise and take me to thee. And take Lot with thee, the son of Haran, thy brother, as thine own son. The Lord be with thee. And Nahor thy brother leave with me till thou returnest in peace. And we go with thee all together. Although Jubilees provides additional details about Abram that Genesis 11 to Genesis 25 does not, there are still enough details provided in Genesis that show that the Lord God Almighty had blessed Abraham in every way. Faithful, faithful is the Lord God Almighty. Trust the Lord in all you do. Talk to him from your heart and wait, watch and see. You may not get everything you want, but you'll certainly get what you need. The Lord God loves us unconditionally. I encourage you to read Genesis 25 for yourself. If this message spoke to your heart and your spirit in any way, leave a comment, like, and share. Thank you for listening. Stay tuned. Genesis 26, coming soon.